we overextend as women. We
Mm,
become over functioning. That's the first thing to recognize.
mm,
When I'm doing way more than I should be, and I deserve to be met. So it's
mm,
a sense of claiming that there's a desire to experience something new. If your man is allowing you to be a woman, he's giving you the space to also express whatever that is for you of being a woman through overflow. It's kind of like, I'm carrying so much. Can you not carry some of it? Feeling exhausted by the end of the day. This is not being in our femininity. It's not so much what you do, it's the way you do it, I believe. Because I can create and I'm in overflow. I'm in creativity in my business because I don't have that same hustle and urgency that I used to have. In the beginning, navigating this soft power, the embodiment of that was like, how can I really allow my softness without collapse? I'm afraid of collapsing. I'm afraid of dissolving if I really just fully surrender.
The Becoming Flame podcast broadcasts pure, unfiltered power exchange that stokes the flame of your being. Because it's time to remember. It's time to return. It's time to become flame. Welcome back to Becoming Flame. I am Kait Tregenza. Today's conversation is for the women who have learned how to hold everything together. The women who are wildly capable, deeply intelligent, and endlessly dependable. It's these women who know how to lead, achieve, perform, and survive. But somewhere along the way, they may have lost touch with what it means to soften, to receive without guilt, to be loved without having to earn it. How many of us have been programmed to earn our love, to earn our respect, to earn our place? And for so many women, the strength became the armor, the competence became the identity, the control became the way that we stayed safe. But there comes this point where the very thing that protected you starts to block not only your connection to self, your identity, who you be below all of that. How do you actually come into intimacy with self, to devotion with self, to truth about who you are, if you are staying so hard, so protected, so in control, so vigilant? And that's really the edge that we're exploring today. How to soften when you learn to harden because it was unsafe. So where's the relationship with safety and softness? When you're longing to come back into truth, when you're longing to come back into self, what happens when a woman begins to loosen that grip? Loosen that grip on hyper independence, on self-protection, on control, and really ask these deeper questions of like, what am I actually bracing for? Who am I when I'm no longer performing power, but actually inhabiting it? And does the power that I inhabit from a true sense of power actually look, feel, or exist in the same way as when I'm performing it? What if that softness that I'm running from is not actually a weakness? What if devotion is not submission? What if receiving love actually requires a lot more courage than holding it all alone and juggling all of those balls ever did? These are really nuanced, challenging conversations because it shifts it into, how do I want to live? Do I want to keep bracing? Do I want to hold the entire sky by myself? Do I want to continue to be praised for being strong while being so exhausted by how much I carry? Do I want to continue to confuse love with being needed, with being useful? Do I want my love to be utilitarian, or do I want it to just be freely given because I exist? If you've ever wondered why softness is something you can't trust, this conversation is for you. Today, we're talking to Rose Wild about all of this. Rose is a psychotherapist and guide for women who have mastered strength in every area of their life, but they're being called into a different kind of power and love. Her work is really around this devotional aspect. She looks at polarity of softness, this emotional truth, helping women unravel from the patterns. She's not just talking about femininity as an aesthetic or as a role to perform. She's not in the trad wife, like just devote your life to this man, but she's really speaking to something deeper. Who is that woman beneath the armor? Who could she actually be? The woman who has learned how to lead, hold, achieve, and survive, but is now asking, what would it mean to be met, to receive, and to soften without losing yourself, without losing your agency, without losing who you be in the process? What has to unravel when control becomes a barrier to love? And what it really takes to move from self-protection into devotion. And how do we remain the agent of our own life, the sovereign queen of our own life, and still have everyone around us lifting us up and and promoting our lives? Because that sounds really way easier. So let's dive in. Rose, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to Becoming Flame.
Thank you, love. It's great to be here.
I think this conversation with us today is going to be very nuanced. It's going to be discussing all the various different shades of gray. For people who are called highly capable, high achieving, there's so many nuances to how you become high achieving. You can become high achieving out of pure trauma, learning to earn love, learning that love is a performance based on what you do, based on how you please other people, based on all of these factors that sit external to you and your body. You had all of this 90s, early 2000s pop culture that really told you women can do it all. Women are independent, highly capable, don't need no man. There's so much cultural expectation as well around how a woman has been formed into this hyper capability, hyper independence. And so I don't think it's as easy as saying like, just undo it, right? Because to which part, where do I start? Which thread do I pull?
Yeah.
And so I would love to start the conversation with when she's come from all of that society, that feminism, that, stand on your own 2 feet. She's coming from hyper capability. She's earning her own money. She can do all of that. And yet there's this, even if she's partnered, there's this sense of like, I'm alone. She might not be lonely, but it's like, I'm alone in this world. How do you even begin to unravel with this woman?
That's a great question. Yeah. I think that I think it's important, first of all, to acknowledge the beauty and the power that comes with being a capable woman. Because there's a reason we develop like that. We become the man in our own life because there's an absence of, healthy fathering and presence of healthy masculinity that does exist,
Mm,
but it's also, it's not common for us to have that as a model. So we kind of overextend as women. We
mm,
become over functioning. And I think that that's the first thing to recognize
mm,
when a woman enters in is that I'm doing way more than I should be, and I deserve to be met. So it's
mm,
a sense of claiming that it's possible and a desire to experience something new. And also, as a high achieving person, it's very hard to admit. I know myself because I was, really good at life, really good at doing the postgraduate degree, taking myself to the side of the world on my own. I was very good at getting what I wanted.
mm,
But when it came to love, I just wasn't really that good at it. I wasn't really manifesting the kind of guy that I actually wanted to be with. I always end up being in the driver's seat or just not feeling like a woman. So I
Yeah.
think that that's the most important thing, is to admit that admit that there's an area of your life that
Mm.
needs some love and some development, and it's not through the formula that got you success in other areas of your lives. You know, if you use force and kind of like very linear, moving towards penetrative energy that is actually very masculine in love, you will get polarity, but it will not be the polarity that you want. You will end up with a very passive, effeminized kind of man.
Yeah. We see
So
that a lot, right? We see the role reversal all the time.
yes, and it's frustrating when you're in that loop, because it really does feel like, where are all the men? Where are all the masculine men? Like, do they even exist? Like, what's going on? But it does, when we shift as women and we come into our true nature, which is not just softness, right? It's balance, it's harmony. Then we also become an energetic match for the men that are out there, because they are.
So, how does this work if you're not a soft woman? I mean, you can be
Mhm.
feminine and not soft, right? So, maybe it's worthwhile, like, really talking about soft power, what that
Yeah.
means, and how that translates, even if you happen to be more of that fierce, commanding, very feminine still, but more of that, that stronger, dark feminine sort of
Yeah.
style.
Well, I think it's important to recognize, from my perspective anyway, that the feminine has 1,000 faces, right? So many of us are more comfortable in one expression of the feminine. So for me, for years, the fiery, the wild woman, being very primal and expressive and all of this stuff was something that I was comfortable with. It was the more subtle devotional aspects that I personally had to work harder to connect with, believe it or not. Maybe not now. It's like I feel that my expression is often in devotional as well, but it was not always like that. So what I would say is, just because you identify as something as a woman does not mean that you do not hold any of your own expression of a different quality. Softness to one woman maybe look like something like a trad wife, whatever Instagram situation. And softness to someone else may just be like taking a breath out and like letting herself take a little bit less, more time to do something, right? So I think that it's not that women aren't soft, they've just not had chance or permission or possibility of experiencing that yet.
And so what does devotional mean then in that context, to be a devotional woman?
I think devotion for me means that everything that I do, the actions that I do, are going up to this higher power, whatever that is for you as a woman. For me, in devotional union, it's that the relationship itself is sacred. And
Mm.
so everything that I do, whether it's mundane, even small things, I am offering it up as service to on the altar of the love, right? So that
Is
started
it the love
before.
to self or love to this partner? Or what if you're single? Like, yeah,
Both,
okay,
but for me, and I think it's essential for women, and before, if you are open to union, is that you become into that before. You don't wait for someone else to give you permission, and it's a way of life, a way
got
of
it.
treating yourself. Yes, even in those moments you don't feel like it. And it's not even always like buying flowers and laying the altar and lighting the candles. It's actually showing up for yourself in the things that you don't really want to do, but doing it from a place of, I've got you. And this is that inner union thing of your inner masculine is showing up for your feminine before he arrives.
What do you mean? Like, give us an example, give us some context to that.
Honestly, sometimes it's not even that pretty. I think the masculine stuff is like, you know what, you're going to do what you say you're going to do.
Just being
I said that
integrate.
we would. I
Yeah.
said that we would, like, save this much money or put this much money aside to this, and we're going to do that because we honor our word. We're in integrity, right? Or that they're in a masculine protect your space when you have your moon or your cycle. It's like, no, we say no now. The boundaries are clear because this is our sacred time to go within and to connect with ourselves. So in my eyes, this is this is the inner union of the inner masculine supporting your feminine.
So it's almost like you have to get really clear, whether you're in relationship with yourself or or whether you're trying to bring in someone into your life. And honestly, any relationship is probably, you know, part of this conversation is you have to be really clear on what you want in your life, what you want that life to look like, to feel like, to be like. How does it look day to day? How does it feel day to day? What are the kinds of interactions you're having? What are the kinds of conversations? How long does that person's day, all of these things. You set that up and then you can put boundaries and limits and guidelines, rules, whatever you want to say. And then holding that is part of the way that you show up for yourself in devotion.
Yes, I would say so. For example, before I met Valentine, I've always really seen myself as a mother. It's been a big part of seen it as part of my path. And I thought, well, how do I claim this energy
Mm.
of being a mother in a healthy way, right? Because I don't want to mother a man. I don't want to mother my friends. It's not really the energy that is helpful. So I adopted a dog, my dog Wolfie, and everyone said, don't adopt a husky. He's crazy. You're on your own. You're better off with like a chihuahua or something. And I just did it anyway because I'm a bit like that. And it was the best thing I could have done because I felt that through him, I was also in devotion, right? I was able to step into an energy, not waiting for external circumstances to decide that for me. It's like this is part of who I am, and I'm going to move towards that in whatever means that I have available for me now.
Mm.
And I think that that's a piece I would say that in the women that I speak with that they struggle with. It's almost like staying in the maiden
Mhm.
archetype, waiting for the prince to
Prince
arrive
Charming.
to initiate them into the next stage of life, when
Right.
actually he's waiting for a queen. So we need to kind of do that piece
Hmm.
to midwife ourselves into the next stage of womanhood.
We need updated fairy tales is the point.
Yeah, I
We
think so.
no more Cinderella, no more Snow White.
Exactly. Yeah. This part of the issue, right?
And so what does that actually feel like that's different for anyone who's never heard of this concept of like, I need to upgrade myself into the queen that I be in order to step into the relationship with the king that I'm wanting. What
Yeah.
is that shift from maiden to queen? Because I think that we've heard of maiden to mother, but what does maiden to queen look like and feel
Yeah.
like?
For me, the maiden, I love the maiden, by the way. It's like every month in my inner spring, I'm in my inner spring now. So I'm like really in that maiden curiosity energy. And there's something so beautiful about it. It's so playful, so exploratory. But she's not fully formed yet. She's like a bud, a flower bud, right? And then the queen is for me is like the highest expression of the fullness of a woman in a sense of she actually accepts responsibility, whereas the maiden and the princess doesn't want responsibility. She wants to outsource that to someone else while
Right,
simultaneously outsourcing her power.
right.
So the shift is internal into like I am in sovereign. I take responsibility of my actions. I am able to do things better. I hold myself accountable. I show up and I hold myself with grace. So it's not, it sounds, I think that the queen archetype's been glamorized a little bit in my perspective because she's super, I don't know, everyone wants to be the queen, right? But the reality of showing up is like, it's the responsibility aspect, I believe.
So going back to this highly capable archetypal woman, stereotypical woman that we're talking to and about, I would say that she has an incredible capacity to hold responsibility and
Yeah.
hold herself accountable. Does she go too far? Does everything
Mm.
now become something she's responsible for? Is that part of the issue that she's stepped into that queen too well? She's
Absolutely.
now
Yeah.
the sovereign over all the subjects, and anyone who's in her reign is her responsibility in addition to everything that is only hers to take care of.
Absolutely. This is such a good point. You know, may have established this responsibility, also the queen archetype, but can you let people in, or is there like a barbed wire fence around your queendom that just prevents people? You know, you've got this entourage of protection around your heart, and no one, even a suitor, a king, a potential king, cannot get through because there is no space, there is no throne next to the queen.
Mm.
So there is this subtle balance, and this is what soft power to me is. It's this ability to apologize for your power and your fullness and your capability, but also having a soft front and like a strong spine. So it's the ability to receive, rest into the back of your body, to feel, to be led by your feelings, and to also allow yourself to be vulnerable. Because if we can't do that, then we can't have a relationship that we want. It's easier to stay in the position of being the one that's the leader, actually.
Yeah. And taking responsibility from everyone from afar and standing on the balcony and just being like, and I can understand in that perspective, having been there myself, it's I can't take on any more relationships right now, intimate or non-intimate, because I don't have any bandwidth. I can't take on more responsibility for you or more accountability. I can't clean up any more messes. And when
Hmm.
you get into this patterning and your energy is like, I'll take care of everything for you, and that's proceeding, you attract those kinds of people who need cleanups on aisle 4, and their whole life is aisle 4.
Absolutely.
And it
Yeah.
becomes this, like, exhausting. I remember a friend of mine years ago was like, "Oh my god, Kate, you've got to shut down the animal shelter. Like, you just collect you collect all of these, stray cats and dogs that just need, to be fed and nursed back to health, and once they siphon off all of your energy, they're off to go." And
Yeah.
you can get into this really depletive cycle where it's like,
Hmm.
it is not worth me ever being in a relationship with anyone.
Hmm.
For me, I was so bad that it was like colleagues, friends, partner, family, everyone. And it was like I was hollowing myself out because I was capable. Because and there's this capability tax, right? It's like, "Oh,
Hmm.
she's giving that out for free. Yeah, I'll take that."
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
it's this loop. And so what would be like, I know what I did, but I don't know that it was necessarily the most effective thing to get out of that.
What did you do?
I'm trying to think of like the absolute first thing.
Yeah.
I think the first thing was like awareness of this and just like the awareness of where all my energy was going and really mapping out my relationships of where time, energy, support, all of these sort of currencies that you want flowing between two individuals in a relationship of any kind. And you're like, okay, well, if my outlet is so much bigger than my inlet, I'm going to first have a conversation with this individual. The likely scenario, at least as it happened with me, was like every single one of my relationships was the same kind of relationship in various different domains of my life, right? So I was like, okay, that's useful information. I know what my pattern in relationships is because it's showing up in every single kind of
Mhm.
relationship. It's not just this is occurring in intimate relationships, but my friendships are great. It was every single relationship. And that really stemmed from like how relationships were defined for me in my
Mhm.
familial intimate relationships, particularly with my parents, and that stemmed out from there. And so I think mapping that out was really useful at first. Having that conversation about, are you willing to shift into a new dynamic? The answer, like, spoiler alert, is usually no. There's there's a valuable exchange that the other person is getting, and if that person's not willing to, like, take your relationship to a more sovereign, liberated, sort of free state, then those people will, like, naturally exit or be exited from your life. And then I think the next step for me was, like, so what do I want in relationships? What is it now that I'm
Mhm.
carving out space for. And then in trying to do that, realized I had skipped a step because I was attracting the same people again.
Mm,
And that's when I started to realize, okay, the pattern needs to shift in me. And that was actually really around understanding, um, when I met a new person, and you start to become cognizant of this and hyper aware of this stuff when you're doing it, right? So I would meet new people and I would all of a sudden be offering support or help in some particular way. A
mm,
hello person that I just met 30 seconds ago. Yes, I can help you move house. What? And so it was a really hard come to Jesus moment, I think, for me in my life of going, hey, I need to just learn that I am enough as I am. And
mm,
that was actually stripping all relations back and like dating myself and being so intentional with like who I
mm,
be and what
mm.
I get from myself. But I think I did it in a really long and convoluted way. And I'm sure that I think you have like a better set of skills to offer.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that's a real evolution, relational evolution, and I have a bit of a funny stance on this, a bit of a curveball, but I think it's so powerful, and it's a bit of an accelerator. It is parasite cleansing.
Yeah.
Because, and I'm not advocating for, by the way, if you're new to cleansing, please don't just jump into some random parasite cleanse. I am not a doctor, but I also know that when I got to the parasite round of cleansing, after you do liver, you do all of the other things because you need to make sure the detox pathways are open, right? So, started this parasite cleanse and I didn't realize how deeply connected these parasites were to my relationship patterns. And then I was having these wild experiences where I would have die-off symptoms. Of those of you who haven't had it before, it's, you feel kind of fluey, you feel a bit off, you feel a bit poisoned. It's like, oh shit, I'm moving something through through my body. So this would start to happen, and at a certain point, you get familiar with it because you kind of know how your body responds to this process. And then I would have something happen in a relationship, either a friendship or something from an ex partner, where either it would blow up, they would demand something from me because I had the same pattern as you. So I was like over giving. I didn't realize it was also in friendships, but it was. So it's overextending, and you're basically a good host, right, for the parasitic energies. Whether that's, I'm not calling every person a parasite, but it's all interrelated from my perspective. And as I cleared away the actual relational entanglements, had those conversations, asserted my boundaries. Some of those relationships ended quite
Mm.
abruptly, quite a lot of them actually, during that parasite cleanse.
Wow.
I then physically saw parasites leaving. And so it was this feedback process of like, wow, we really have these other influences moving through us that are not necessarily our soul. They're pulling from us, whether that be, what's coming from the sky or the parasites or what we consume when we watch, and the programming we receive about being afraid of men. I see it all as being part of the same brainwashing and
Mm.
control methods.
I think it's such a good reminder. After my first ever like boyfriend that turned into like an 8-year relationship, like I'd never had a boyfriend then, mid-20s, meet this guy. We were in together for 8 years and left him, and I did a panchakarma. I went to India and did it for 28 days. I think that it was the biggest and best reset of my life. It was like to have this clear vessel at that time. I don't think that I have been clearer at any other time in my life, and it's just like reminding me that I've also done a parasite cleanse with a naturopath that went very badly. Like the binder didn't work, and then it was like more parasites that came, and the
Yeah.
opposite happened to me in my life where it was all of a sudden it was like, "Oh my god, what is around me?" Like it was like to have the clarity of one protocol going really well and
Mm,
the absolute like overwhelm of one protocol going really badly, you start to actually understand what you just said.
Mhm.
I've experienced like the two extremes of how that physically manifests in your life. And it's like, it's actually something that people probably don't always connect the dots on.
No, you can't. And thank you for sharing that actually, because that's a really important point for anyone who's listening and is interested in parasite cleansing. I did the same thing with a funny doctor in Mexico. I was there for 21 days. It was like I didn't eat any foods. I was on juices for however long. But we need to do it longer, right? You need to do it for 3 months at least because of the cycle of the eggs. So what ended up happening for me also was they multiplied and I started to get more symptoms until I
Yeah.
went back and did it properly. So yeah, when you say that you felt that energy of other people, that was it kind of like people wanting something from you?
So it was two things. It was firstly, I had this really amazing ability to actually understand how many of my thoughts were not my thoughts
Mm,
because I had like severe, I wouldn't say they were like suicidal thoughts, but they were like these intense fear of dying all of a sudden. So it was almost like the opposite of suicide. Like it was like trying to cling on to my life. Like I was really, really scared of dying. And that was really weird for me because I think that death is like, I have no fear of death. I'm very eager to die. Like, reset, please. This is not fun. Like, I'm going to come back when everything's reset. No. And so all of a sudden I had, oh my God, I couldn't breathe. Like, and I was in this like, I was, like, living up here and my, like, oh my god, I, like, can't breathe, I can't s like, this kind of,
mm,
like, feeling for a really, like, extended period of time, like, probably, like, a month, 6 weeks, and around, that time, there was a little bit of a change in my stools, but really what it was is it was a main change in my appetite.
mm,
And then I started having really unique pains in various parts of, like, my lower back, like,
mhm,
and, like, as I've had it explained to me at by someone who works with failed protocols, it's like the burrowing and and then it became like, I'm now in a worse position to rid myself of these parasites
mm,
than had I just maybe not tried to clear them poorly. So I think people need to really understand, and I went with a naturopath and did what I thought was, you know, the right way of doing this.
yeah,
But I think it's really important to go with someone who's a specialist in parasite cleansing, who really, really does this day in and day out and is gonna have, you know, knows exactly what to do if you're supposed to do colonoscopies or whatever else in addition
mhm,
to just the cleansing or just, whatever you're taking internally. But yeah, I think this conversation in general, when you were trying to clean up your life, taking like a deep cleanse to your body. I did not predict this part of our conversation going. So this is really cool.
yes, yeah, and I also love to work with the lymphatic system for that reason as well, because it's the elimination of waste. So in my self power challenge on day one, we just go in with this, because if we're not working with the physical body and letting stuff go, then we're also not we're missing a big piece of the jigsaw puzzle.
Right.
Yeah, but
So you're sort of
coming
saying,
back.
like, it's all well and good to talk about somatic release or
Mm.
energetic release, but it needs to go in tandem with a physical body release and a cleanse and a lymphatic drainage and all of
I
those things.
believe so, yeah. I have a practice that I teach. It's called somatic alchemy, and that is a way of transmuting that density into meeting it, giving it expression, and then moving it into a different state, moving it into a different emotion, a different way of being. And that, in my experience, that in combination with the physical cleansing, the lymphatic massage, the movement or everything, it actually really helps for us to shift relationship patterns as well when it's done as a regular practice in the morning or what have you.
And so is there any particular place in the body that you think the relationship pattern is more held than others? I mean, the lymphatic system is a large system, so where
Yeah,
do you get
true.
your clients to mostly focus?
I mean, the womb
Mhm.
and the heart, the two, energy centers that we hold. we don't even know we're holding it because a lot of the time with the heart, it's actually armoring and numbness, right? The layers of calcification that can happen when we have a heartbreak. And we have a heartbreak, sometimes you forget the pain that you experienced if it became hardened, if you had that idea of like, this will never happen to me again. And then we
Yeah.
become stronger.
I vow this will never happen again. And what's
Yeah.
the easiest way to do that? Never fall in love again.
Yeah. I will never put myself at risk again.
Yeah.
I will never become vulnerable again to risk.
Yeah.
And I think that we all do that to a greater or lesser extent. And then that's what they're doing the heart, that somatics with the heart, and also doing the work physically to go into your life and say, okay, how have I built fortresses around myself in my time, in the things I do, the way that I do things that doesn't allow anyone in.
Mm. And I
Um,
guess, am I willing to build safety there now to try?
yeah. And I call that like opening with discernment, you know? It's not, we don't need to romanticize like living life with this open, endlessly open heart. I think we're meant to be weathered by heartbreak. We're meant to get more specific about what it is that we're a yes for and what it is we're a no for, so that we can really have the capacity to open to that full yes and honor when it's not it.
I suppose again, you've describe the difference between shifting from a maiden into a queen into a different way, right? That naivety and that innocence of youth, while beautiful, doesn't serve us in our queen, in our queen era. That's a queen who is truly in charge of herself, her land, her empire, needs discernment and needs like that wisdom that's unfortunately earned from trial.
Yeah. And it makes me think about self-worth as well, you know. I speak to a lot of women who say that they want to meet their husband, or they want to be a mother, they want to be in union, they want to feel, they want to experience these things. And yet when it comes to dating, their behavior is still reflecting that of the maiden, of moving fast, getting wrapped up in the
Mm,
chemistry, the electricity, the attraction, the words even of what he has to say. Whereas the queen doesn't operate from that. She takes her time. She observes her sensation, yeah, as attraction, but as a compatibility. You can say the words, but are the actions
mm,
actually in integrity with the words?
mm.
Only time tells with that. And I think that dating from that perspective is radically different, you know, to versus like, we don't even know what we want, but yeah, I now have feelings. How many
Mm,
times in my 20s would I get like kind of wrapped up in a situation with a guy who was like, oh, we'll have a serious conversation later on, about
right.
alignment, about are we on the same page, about what our values are? Do you want this? I want that. And I think the Queen actually is so clear in the beginning. She establishes that alignment before she opens.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's not about avoiding a heartbreak. It's avoiding heartbreaks that didn't need to happen
Yeah.
because they were always going to happen. That person was never going to be, and you're wasting your time, you're wasting your energy, all of these other things, right? And so I think that's a really important thing. It's interesting that you said self-worth as that underlier because I think it's also the understand worth, yes, 100%, but then the expression and the holding of that needs to come from that place of that queen power. So like they
Mhm.
go in hand. Like you probably can't get that power without understanding that inherent worth that you are.
Yeah. And the need to be chosen, like we need to let go of this need to
That
be
need to be
chosen.
chosen.
And this need to, I think this is where the whole idea of decentering men topic comes on. Like, I'm not personally a fan of this term because I don't know, I don't think it's necessary in some ways. But I understand also that this impulse would come from not needing to be chosen or waiting for a man to give you what it is that you need. But at the same time, allowing him in even though you can do it, doesn't mean you have to do it. There's something so delicious about feeling like, I know I've got me, but I'm gonna let him do it anyway, you know?
Yeah. I think the challenge for someone who I'm thinking about your typical clientele, the kinds of women that listen to this podcast, there's an incredible amount of emotional maturity, understanding of self. You know, it's not just like I'm this highly capable, masculine driven woman. There's a lot of nuance there. There's a lot of emotional repertoire as well, lived through wisdom, but also through natural innate gifts. And there's this image that I have in my mind of saying, well, I didn't need to decenter men because men were never the center, but I'm still deeply yearning to be chosen. Is that just like Disney conditioning, or does everyone just deeply, deeply want to be chosen no matter how much they know that they in themselves are a true catch? Like, is there a part of us that just always wants to be, you know, proposed to and adored and all of that and like chased after and stuff? How does
Yes.
it play together?
I still feel like that, and I'm in union, you know? I still want to feel pursued,
Yeah.
claimed,
Yeah.
ravished, honored, and yeah, like I'm the prize. Of course, we all have that desire, but from a place of not from a need of validation.
Mm,
I think there's a difference. There's a subtle difference between needing to be chosen and needing attention from men, the masculine, versus wanting your man, wanting to
mm.
choose your man and him choose you, to devote fully and to give all the love that you have and to receive all the possible love that there is out there. Like that is a beautiful thing. And I think that is almost, I am, there is the kind of wounded side of the need for validation. Sometimes it makes women sometimes give themselves way too early as well. I believe that's a bit of a controversial thing for me to say, but I never didn't live through that myself. It's like this sense of I just in it, so I give of myself, but actually, you know, when you're treated like the prize, you don't feel like that. He will honor your pacing.
Mm.
When a man is serious about you in that sense. So I think that the desire to be chosen, to we could say chosen. I would also say like claim the desire to be claimed by your beloved. I don't think that ever goes away. For at least for me, it's still very much there. There's new layers to it, depths to it that
But it's
that unfold.
how you want that, and it's how you accept that. Okay, I think that's understood. I wanna go back to this heartbreak because I
Mm.
I think there's a lot of nuance in opening yourself back up to being in devotion to a man after, um I think so many women these days are really experiencing some truly toxic things happening to them. That's harder, and especially if that compounds, especially if you get into your 30s or your 40s and you've only known this cycle.
I'm here.
I wanted to go back to that heartbreak because I think I'm just thinking about my own collection of girlfriends who some have been very lucky in love early on in long-term, very successful unions, no real issues. Others who can be the sweetest, most loving, most giving women who also know their worth, who also know that they're they're a real prize. And yet get in one after another of these truly toxic, and not just toxic as in like it was a bad time for both of them or it was like a bit weird, like the kinds of relationships that keep you looping for years, like replaying things like, what did he mean by that when he said that one time 5 years ago? Like this kind of stuff that really has got them replaying conversations, trying to work out, where did I miss red flags? Why
Mm.
did I accept that? Is anything he ever said true? And There's a difference there between the heartbreak and then the lack of self-trust to really go, okay, I think I've understood this so that I can start to dismantle it, so that I can start to unravel what that was and look into my identity and look into what I'm doing as a result or looking the patterns that I'm in. But I think that there's this part where sometimes women really don't understand what happened.
Mm.
And that keeps them in this loop of like, well, so if I don't know what happened, how do I change it in order to assume that it's not going to happen again? And as it keeps happening, instead of them saying, I'm in this pattern or I'm in this attraction to this, I think they make it about themselves or they make meaning on who they are.
Yeah.
Um, and that men are all the same, not just that they're dating this particular niche of men.
Mm.
And then they make that mean something really permanent about themselves. And so I guess the question here is about how do you step out of that self-trust diminishing loop and start to rebuild trust in yourself again so that you can actually work out you might be worthy of a man that
Mhm.
matches your ultimate dreams? Because I think
Yeah.
that can be sometimes the really big leap to make where you're like, this is my lot in life. I don't deserve anything better. This is what I'm getting. And I don't think that has to be the end of the story.
Oh my gosh, no. I mean, I will share a little bit of my story. Before I met Valentine, I went through such a painful ending of a breakup with an ex partner, and that was a year-long relationship, and it was a battle, a spiritual battle, I would say, with a narcissist. Anyone who has been through that will know what it takes to actually be the one that says that you leave. And it ended in betrayal. He betrayed me in a very public way, and it was a lot of pain, a lot of everything around it. But I chose at the end of that relationship, even in the pain, even in the disbelief and the self mistrust of like, how could I not have seen this coming? I
Yeah.
chose, I could feel something moving, and I decided that it was spiraling up. It wasn't that it was going to go round again. Because this is when we get those, I believe, those loops in relationships, is when we're avoiding something.
Okay.
If we're really honest with I believe we're really honest with ourselves, it's because we're avoiding a little wound that we don't wanna look inside of ourselves, and so it keeps being outsourced externally somehow. And when we have the courage, I went deep into my own abandonment wounds at the end of that relationship. I ended it and went so into like, okay, what was it that kept me there?
Mm.
What was it that actually made it hard for me to leave? And
Mhm.
therein was the answers that I was really needing to see. It was not
Yeah.
easy. And then, 4 months later, I met Valentine. So I think that it's important for us to recognize that we are powerful beyond what we actually conceive as women,
Yeah.
you know? And that sounds like a cheesy thing to say and an easy thing to say, but change can happen fast once the kind of embodiment and shift happens. It doesn't have to take years of analysis and going deep into like what happened here, what happened there. I believe that it's like, in relationships, there's an alchemy. There's your energy, there's your patterns, and there's also the patterns and the alchemy of the energy of that other person. So you will never have the full picture of it because you're only half of it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my experience.
And then I think the other side where you can keep looping with people is that when you have to either work with that ex, parent with that ex, I don't know, have friends that you want to keep together, something that's keeping you locked into that other person where you actually cannot leave you, when you cannot just like disappear into the sun.
Yeah.
Is that still the same answer? Is it just about alchemizing that which was wounded during or was already wounded before you got into the relationship? Is there a different answer to if you have to keep seeing them?
Mm. That's tricky. That is tricky. And the thing about it is like it's kind of like exposure therapy, right?
Yeah.
It's like if you can master actually this happened with the same ex. So he moved in to the apartment block where me and my auntie lived in Mexico in Tulum. And I saw him every single
It
day
happens,
walking
right?
the dog. And I was like, what is going on here? And actually, what it really helped me in the end. I was pissed to begin with. I was like, really? Does it have to happen? But then after a while of being exposed to emotional state, feeling it, breathing with it, knowing actually, no, I can stay in my center. I can deal with this. I actually got an apology from him as well in the end during that same parasite cleanse. So it was, I think that it's not always going to work out like that. For women, you can't control the other person, of course. Like if you have, for example, an ex who is not fathering in the way that you desire him to, that your kids deserve him to, it's frustrating. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but I do believe that you're kind of getting conditioned into energetic mastery if you're
I
able
think so.
to hold your center in those circumstances.
Some of the strongest women I know, I have run a business and parent children with
Mm,
someone they wish they could never see ever again, and they're showing up 8 hours a day and working alongside someone. That is a level of mastery that I think most women would sit and go, "Just sell your shares in the business." But it's not everybody's path to exit a toxic relationship. Sometimes their path is to learn that and learn what it is to not only alchemize, but, rise above and sit on top of that.
yeah. And it's so easy to sit on the sidelines, isn't it? And to go, oh, this should be like this. But from my experience, from any toxic dynamic that I've been in, my soul was getting like the lessons or it signed up to something that it needed to learn and needed to receive something from that experience in order to get me to the next place that I'm meant to be. And there's no timeline on that, you know? I think that every woman, everyone has that friend, right? That goes back and goes back and goes back to the ex that's just like such bad news. And from the outside, it's easy for someone to go, why? Why you do that to yourself? But from the inside,
Right.
there's something happening. There's a wound, of course, it's happening. But I also believe that there's something that person's working out
I
in
think
that
that can be
person.
true, and I think sometimes part of what you need to work out is, which one's more comfortable for me, sitting in
Mm,
my wound or sitting in my power?
yeah.
Because that's that's something that I've witnessed as well, is that and it's okay if your friend or you come to the conclusion that actually my comfort zone is my misery and that's all I'm willing to be, but then don't complain about it, you know?
Don't call me up and say it
Yeah,
and then get sad about
but
it
if
again.
your comfort zone is just being pushed to the limit as you learn your power and that
Mhm.
this guy feels more comfortable than the unknown you on the other side of your extraordinary transformation, sometimes you've just got to take that leap and learning yourself and learning your heart, learning your body is how you know, is this comfort running back or is it love? And I think going back to maiden versus queen, the number one thing that has changed my life is knowing the difference between comfort and love. And the delta is how much I love myself, how much I put worth on myself, how much I am confident in my own capacity to
Mhm.
stand on my own 2 feet, even if I don't know what that's going to look like. And I think
Yeah,
I think if you're not in relationship with yourself first and you don't have the comfort in your own body first, it's so easy to go back to a guy that gives you false comfort.
totally true. And I also believe we can get that comfort from other places. Like we don't always need to be the one that pours into us ourselves. This is something that I came up like kind of after a few breakups. I was like, actually, we need each other. We are
Yeah.
social beings. We've always been social beings. And this fascination and insistence on we need to be independent and be able to give ourselves absolutely everything is also not true. But it doesn't
Yeah.
mean that we should be going back to a harmful situation. You know, maybe we can get that from our friends. Maybe we can get that. I get that from my dog. At some point,
Yeah.
he's a boy and he's like very kind of alpha. At some point, I remember thinking to myself, if I can get it from Wolfie, if all I'm getting is what I get from Wolfie, I'd just rather hang out with Wolfie, you know? So I think
Yeah.
there's ways that
And I
we
think it's a
can
really good validation point. It's like, it takes a lot of energy to be everything you ever need for yourself. It's really hard to move furniture by yourself. It's really hard. It's impossible.
yeah.
You need a friend.
Yeah, it's true. And then it's like, you get your period in a week and everything's hard and you've got to like carry these things up the stairs. And it's like, why is it so hard to ask for support? Or why is it so rare for this to happen?
I don't know. You're the expert. What's the answer? I think everyone's wondering that.
Well, I think really, I'm a bit of a conspiracy theorist when it comes to these things. I believe it's all a psyop, really, to keep women and men separate. Because when men and women come together and union in family, a healthy expression of a family, we are unstoppable.
Yeah.
Look at all the most powerful families in the world, the elites, right? They are all families. They are all networks that started with the power of the man and the woman together. So when you dismantle the union and you keep women afraid and angry at men and you keep men passive and you keep them in a kind of like slumbered state, addicted to porn, whatever it is that is going on with men, which is like, with an AI girlfriend for as well. This is like happening these days. We're separate and we're at war with each other. And then comes the fight of feminism versus patriarchy. It's just that it's impossible. So I think how clever to sell the idea to women that they're powerful if they're independent
Alone.
and alone and dependent on
I've
the
thought about
state,
that so much.
you know?
It's like it's such an obvious. I think this is why we see the rise of single mothers, of women who are not having children, of all of these kinds of trends, as well as the whole manosphere space. It's like, if you can create this polarity, if you can create this distortion, if you can create this, us versus them, why would you want to work into that? And then you take away all organic dating and you put it on a phone, then you gamify it. And, the more the better.
Mm,
The whole thing is so cheapened,
mhm. You have a
and
good word for it,
you're so
yes.
disposable. You become completely and utterly disposable, and so your devotion to yourself becomes so easily eroded in that kind
Mhm.
of mentality, right?
That's why I honestly believe that if every woman everywhere was sacred gatekeeping her temple of her body, her space, and tending to that, and actually saying, if you want access to me, you actually have to be of these values, be of this kind of man. I know this kind of goes against what I was saying about us being separate, but I believe it also is part of the conversation of men rising,
Mhm.
of initiating the masculine, but it doesn't happen like that, right? So I think that we're in a very interesting time in space and history where shit is hitting the fan, so to speak, It's like everything is coming up and now. And we have a choice, We have a choice as women. Either we become bitter and we stay alone and it's all about the money, it's all about the business, it's all about each other and ourselves, to be honest, the selfishness. Or we choose that our reality is going to be different. And that choice doesn't come when we have the external confirmation, it comes before that because we're making that we actually have the ability to change the paradigm. And I know it's hard to believe if you're someone who has just had constant, like, felt like you've been in a battle when it comes to love or dating or whatever. But honestly, when you make that internal shift, the kind of men that you meet are different. They're there. They're doing the work. They want to do the work with you. They want to protect. They want to provide. They have honor. This exists. It's out there, and I really would
Yeah.
love my mission. A big part of my mission is for women to know that it's possible.
Do you think that's part of what's keeping them out of even considering making changes, is like, to what end? I've seen the men that are around. I'd prefer to watch my, my TV show and snuggle my cat and stay at home in my clean house with my designer bags and, like, I'm happy
Uh,
there. Like, do you think that's part of it?
yes, I think that wounds compound if we don't do the work to kind of like peel back the layers of the heart as they come, it becomes so thick, that scar tissue of like, yes, let's just stay in, my castle that I built. This beautiful castle, like I've got the money, I've got whatever, why do I need a man? But that's the thing. If you think a man is only there for those things, then you're sorely missing out on what is possible, because it's so much more. That piercing presence that a man can bring, that would take you deeper into yourself as a woman, to discover new layers of yourself as a woman when he's really with you, is far outweighs any of the kind of, material aspects that apparently a man is only, like he's just good for that, right? And until we've had an experience of that, what that's like, it's kind of hard to imagine.
So how do you okay, so say you've done this process, you've met a man that you think is, yeah, he's going to match it. He's going to assume that throne,
Mm,
be that king. But you're still a little bit too much in your ice queen. I
yeah,
don't know if I can fully trust you. I don't know how to come to you. I've got my queendom over here. I don't know how to make an empire with you.
yeah.
How how do women start actually shifting how they've always been in a relationship, which has gotten them result A, into, because I can imagine it would be like learning to ask for things that you need.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's a huge pain point for a lot of women. It's like, why do I have to ask you to do these things that we are both, responsible for? Why does all of this have to fall onto me, and now I'm asking you to do these chores?
Mm,
So that's a huge turn off, right? Like, I would assume that that would make her think, I'm not even going to bother starting to ask because I don't want to get in that loop again. But then it's like, okay, well, stop asking for the dishes to be done and ask for, I want to wake up every day and
mm,
feel so claimed, so taken care of. I want my spine to be straight and my heart to be open, as you said earlier.
mhm,
I want to find creative ways that you help me to feel that. Now, I don't know if you can say that to a modern man and he'd be like,
mhm,
gotcha, babe. Like, let's get into that. Like, maybe I'm approaching it in the wrong way. Like,
mm,
help us to learn, how do you actually start changing these habits
yeah.
to have the kind of relationship of your dreams, to be the woman that asks, to be the woman that's open to receive, to soften, to come into that union? What are the kinds of things that I need to start thinking differently?
I used to be extremely identify as like liberal feminist, like equality, I would always often be like, okay, we go 50-50 and you both do the house chores and etc. I can just speak from my experience. Now I'm with a traditional man. It's so much fucking easier because I know what my role is. He knows what his role is. And if neither of us want to do it, we find a way to outsource it because we have that mindset of like, okay, this doesn't fall within either of our responsibility. For example, I absolutely hate doing that thing where you get, like there's food in the sink. And it's just like, I love to cook. I love to make the house beautiful. I love to pour my feminine energy in, but scrubbing toilets and doing these things, like, no, it makes me feel like not good. And so it's about being honest about how it makes you feel. It's like when I'm poured into, so men love to hear how something makes you feel good, so they want to do more of that in my experience, something I'm learning. I'm not perfect at it. Sometimes I also have day, you can ask Valentine, where I'm like, I don't think about the way I say things. But if we can let them know, like, gosh, when this is taken care of, I have so much energy. I feel so much gratitude. Like, I just want to pour into our home. I just want to pick flowers and make it beautiful. It's very different to, like, will you do that thing? Take the bins out. So that's on us, I think, as women, because we can get into that nagging thing. But usually if we're nagging, it's because there's something deeper underneath that we haven't addressed, that's accumulated, that's become resentment, in my opinion. So there's an underlying dissatisfaction either with ourselves or with the relationship or something that's going on that is driving that like touchiness.
But I'm thinking of a lot of men that I know. If their women all of a sudden turned around and started asking, I would feel so full up and full of energy and exuberance and love for you if the bins were just taken care of. And I would just be so open to feeling whatever happens after you take them out. I just know. I mean, maybe it's because I live in Australia at the moment and I know what Australian men are like, but
Okay.
I don't think that anyone would get much but a complete laugh in the face.
Really?
Oh, I mean, I don't maybe I don't wanna, label all 10 million Australian men in a particular way, but, um, I think I was just wondering, like, if the resentment that's underneath the nagging is I don't feel safe enough to open a playful, sensual,
Mm,
truly feminine conversation style with you,
yeah.
and therefore I've reverted into your mother or your manager or your
Mhm.
whatever, whatever. And I'm just wondering I my point is that I don't think any woman wakes up at 8 years old and goes, "One day I'm gonna grow up and be a nagger." And that will make me happy. And then I will nag my husband and my
Yeah.
children and my neighbors, and I will be
Yeah,
the
yeah.
world's greatest nagger. It just
No,
doesn't
it feels
happen.
shit. It feels bad, doesn't it?
It's
When you're
awful.
doing it, you're just like, "Oh gosh," you can hear yourself from outside and you're just, at least for
Ugh.
me, like, "Oh, what's happened to you?" But I think that as long as that's not a baseline, we're all human. Um, I have to say, it really depends on what you're holding as a woman. Because if your man is allowing you to be a woman, as in, he's going out and providing, he is taking care of things, and he's giving you the space to also express whatever that is for you of being a woman through overflow, whether you want to be working or whether you want to be in the house. It's my belief that that feels radically different to I'm going to work, you're going to work. We're doing a very kind of modern, liberal, split situation. Therefore, this is in my lived experience, because I've lived both. That's where this comes in with like the bins, because it's kind of like, I'm carrying so much. Can you not carry some of it?
Right.
And I believe that it gets simpler for me anyway. What works in our relationship is more traditional roles. I never thought I would say that, honestly. If you would have asked me 5 years ago, I would have probably laughed in your face. But, it really does. It work around the house. So, I'm responsible for cooking. I'm responsible for keeping the house tidy and we do have, we're lucky enough to have cleaners that come once a week, because I have also boundaries with that in terms of if I need to overextend myself as a woman, like overextend myself in the sense of being burnt out, feeling like I'm just constant, not feeling sexy in the house, right? Not feeling like, exhausted by the end of the day. This is not being in our femininity, no matter whether that's you go to work or you're working at home. So that I think it's for us to know the boundaries and ask for what it is,
Mm.
what it is that we
But I mean,
need.
you're not in a traditional couple in the true sense of it. I mean, you have a business and clients and you work and you earn your own money.
Mhm.
So, which part do you mean is traditional?
I would say
What
that
is
that
traditional, first of all? Like, which era are we talking about in human history?
in our, I believe, like, regardless of like how much money I make, Valentine always wants to be the main provider because that's what he sees his role as a man. So, he does hold that in our relationship. So I'm able to, it's not so much what you do, it's the way you do it, I believe. Because I can create, and I'm in overflow, I'm in creativity in my business because I don't have that same hustle and urgency that I used to have when I was really in this boss babe mentality. So it's not so much like what I'm doing, it's the way that I'm doing it. I had a big break and came back again in a very different way and had to relearn how to approach my business from a true place of femininity, not just like performing femininity. And that's an ongoing journey that I think every woman is never, like it is continuous because we meet those edges again of those old patterns of like, okay, usually I would force it or, override my cycle or need to rush.
Mm.
So I think that it's the way that you do things. But we're traditional in that sense. We're traditional in the sense of house roles.
I have two follow-up questions then. When you said he wants to be the main provider,
Mhm.
how does it work with your dynamic? Does that mean that the more that you make it pushes him to elevate more? Or have you noticed that there are any unconscious, subconscious sort of like energetic limits that you yourself reach if you feel your business
Mhm.
is going to overtake him?
That's a really good question. And in the beginning, that was the navigating of this soft power. Because for me, the embodiment of that was like, how can I really allow my softness without collapse? I'm afraid of collapsing. I'm afraid of dissolving if I really just fully surrender. So I just explored that edge for a while. And then it actually allowed me to regenerate from a deep sense within of energy. It was uncomfortable at moments because I was just like, oh, I don't know what to. I'm used to like being quite fiery and go getter since I was very young. I left home when I was 16. Yeah, it's been a long time of being the strong woman. And from what he's described, is that when if I start to make more money, it pushes him in a positive sense to also. So he doesn't see it as it is good for us actually because it expands our collective field together. And I think that takes a lot, from a man and a masculine to be able to be aware of himself and track his own reactions to things. Because oftentimes men can be threatened
Yeah.
by the strength of women as
The
well,
reason
that
I
does
asked you that
happen.
is because I was in what sounds like at the surface a
Mm,
relationship that you're describing. And when I hit a limit, there was disharmony in
mm,
the union that in turn forced me to actually subconsciously reduce my earning capacity.
mm,
And actually that was what I would have called a man performing
mhm.
union, performing,
Yeah,
but was still very much in control. And what I've learned about power is that true power needs very little force and very little control. And when you meet a man or a woman, when you meet a person with true power, it's an effortless, delicate, like they understand the force of who they be is the power that they have. They don't need to push very much at all. And
yeah,
so the more power that you innately hold within your being, within your truth, within your body, like when you actually understand the vessel of creation that you are, and you can work in union with another in the polarity of the two to amplify and intensify and magnetize and magnify creation, the force on each of them is so delicate, right? Like
yeah,
it's this finessing. And I learned a lot in that relationship of like, oh, actually, power doesn't take this form of big voice, big presence, big words, big
yeah,
talking. And I think I've learned over time is that if a man needs to tell you a lot about what he thinks or what he believes, stop listening.
start watching.
Start watching.
Yeah,
Stop stop
absolutely.
stop
That's a
talking to
such
men
a
about what they think and what they believe.
such a good topic,
It doesn't need a conversation.
the performing polarity and performing masculinity. I think that, I wrote about this recently. It's like when we go away from, when we're moving from being like the ice queen or the strong woman, right? Of right, you're only attracting kind of feminized men, or and then you just shut your doors down and you're like, fuck this, or you end up accepting that you're going to be the one that's the initiator. When you work through that and you start to like connect with your feminine energy, you start to connect, you're understanding the dynamics, and you're like, okay, I will let him move into the space, and like you're figuring it out. I think that's when most women encounter their first kind of masculine guy. Maybe in my experience was like this like performing polarity. I thought, okay, it kind of sounds like it looks like on the outside that it is this, but there's also the woundedness in there of like, yeah, control around money, control around you as a woman.
Yeah.
It's used as a mask or a copy and paste strategy to shadow, to avoid the wounds, to avoid the work. I had to learn that the hard way as well, and then come out the other side to experience what I have now. It's just, it's funny because the previous guy who was very much, like mass polarity. This is, the woman's shield, the man's frame, and had all of this language, the David Data
Yeah.
manual, whatever. And then when I met Valentine, it was like, I don't know, like date 5 or 6 or something. And he's like, yeah, when I was 14, I was like sent into the Austrian forest with this man to do masculine initiation. And I read all of David Data's books back then. And I was like, oh, you didn't mention it like at the beginning, the singer is it's because it's in him. It's part of who he is. And that's what I think is important for women to recognize when they're starting to date masculine men is don't, like you say, don't listen to what they say. Watch how they move and how your body responds and how it feels as a result of that. Like, do their words and actions actually align?
The other thing that's coming to me based on the conversation and everything I'm learning from you in this is the hard reflection for me was in that masculine model that I, first of all, let him lead that relationship because I stepped back into the maiden of you now may take care of me.
Hmm.
And I'm learning in this moment in real time of like, if you're a maiden in a masculine relationship with a control, that's just a father-daughter relationship.
Hmm.
So if you don't want to be in a mother-son relationship, you also don't want to be in a father-daughter relationship. And so learning to first come into that queen, it's
Mm,
really the foundation for all else that comes out because queens don't date little boys and kings don't date little girls.
for sure. For
Mic
sure.
drop.
Absolutely. I love that. It is. It's such a journey. It's
Mm.
such an incredible journey into becoming, into union. And I think we should just relish it as well, even those moments where you go on a date and you're like, oh my gosh, this is like, I just want to leave. Is like you're getting, and
You're getting
maybe I
closer?
see it in a very like romantic way, but I could feel Valentine before I met him. I read notes written in my phone from, I think it was like 2020, 2024 in October or something. I wrote down him. I was channeling his energy. I was like, this is who he is. This is how he moves through the world, even down to the bloody clothes he wore and like the kind of
Yeah.
expressions on his face. And I forgot about this list. And then when last year I was on a plane from Mexico to meet him in Austria, and I happened to look at my phone, and I was just like, oh my gosh, it's him. It's him. And I shared it with him and he started to cry. There is a sense of like, allow yourself to be in romance with this future beloved, with your
Yeah.
man before you've even met him. And perhaps those disappointments and the heartbreaks and the where is he is actually like all part of the love story, you know? But we have to have the courage to
Yeah.
walk away from the things that are not that.
It's
if we
so
actually want to experience it.
It's so fascinating what you're saying because I am very familiar with this. I think part of my questions earlier about self-trust have to come, and I'm not saying that my journey is going to be a universal one, but there might be somebody out there, who has a similar situation. So I met my daughter about 6, 7 years before I met her father. And it was a long time waiting for him to come, and I was starting to feel her urgency to come,
Mhm,
and she's like, pushing me like, "Come on, like, open yourself up." And so I did a lot of this sort of like, I guess, the opening and the allowing and the like tapping into like who this person is. And I remember coming back to a meditation with her one time and being like, "Okay, this is like kind of what I think and feel he is." And actually she refined it even further to the point where it's like, she told me what country he was living, like born in, like his educational background, what his physical self would look like the kinds of sense of humor. Like I knew this guy to like, I could chisel him in class, like I knew who he was. And so then after that, I started dreaming about him, and I would like wake up every morning and have these like deja vu style experiences of how he would be waking me up in the morning. And I fell so deeply and deeply in love with him. And I was opening, and like through this experience of, I guess, welcoming this man into my bed, because I was living alone at that time, and I had this huge apartment with this like amazing closet. And I used to make this joke to my girlfriends of being like, I would rather have sex with a man on the first date than share my closet. Like it's not about like sharing my body, it's about sharing my walk-in robe. At this point is like, it's so precious to me. I've got everything set up like it's my like I've been dreaming of this forever, and it's got to be
yeah.
like this really special guy, and I'm always only saying that because it's like all the wisdom at the time is like, don't share your body until you're ready. I'm like, I share my body before I share my closet. Come on. Anyway, so like I meet him, and it was I had only ever had karmic, like deeply karmic relationships as well, where the ones that I had, like every time I had met a man that I went into a relationship, it was like, oh my God, like you feel like a continuation of this, this beautiful romance. And it had been like, and so I hadn't had, like, it wasn't a strange feeling for me to meet someone and be like, "Oh, I deeply remember you. I deeply,
Mhm,
deeply remember you." But it was the first time that I deeply remembered someone in the future,
mhm,
not in the past. So, like, it made me feel like, "Oh, we haven't probably had as much of a past together as we would have a future." Then I start to talk to him, and he checks off every single thing that I was told from my daughter and told from my dreams and my premonitions. And, fast forward a couple months, and we're together for the first time, and it's beautiful and it's perfect. And he starts to do these things from my dreams. And I was like, oh my God, like it's all, and like my whole body is like, this is him.
mhm,
Like the first time that I was with him as well was very similar to the dreams that I had had of what that would feel like, of what his energy, all of this kind of stuff. And I think from my personal perspective, given that my marriage didn't work out, was that all of the red flags that I would have normally looked at
mhm.
were ignored because
Okay.
because of that. And so I guess just in case this is relevant to anybody listening, what can be the downsides, I guess, of doing these kinds of feeling activities and it not going how you think it's going to go, or it being a different, like for me, what I've come to the conclusion of was, this was always, I asked my daughter, "Who's your father?" I
Yeah,
didn't necessarily
yeah,
ask her, "Who's the love of my life?"
yes.
And they don't always have to be equal things. And
Mhm,
she has the perfect father for her, and
mhm,
he was the perfect catalyst into who I now am claiming myself into, and I have so much love and respect and honoring for that. But I don't, it's like, it's that, oh, am I really ready to go and build trust in that kind of union again?
Yeah.
Given that I thought that my body and, all of like the forces that be coming together were giving me a
Yeah.
particular thing. And I asked this question both selfishly, but also just in case there is someone out there
Mm,
that's done a course like this or that's worked with a mentor or something, and
mhm.
it didn't go the way that they like. I'm so glad for you that it's worked out for you, but it doesn't necessarily guarantee for everybody that it does, and I just thought maybe you have something to say to that.
Yeah, I think that, like you say, thank you for sharing your story, some of your story, by the way. And I believe that there are many different souls out there, right? There's many different kinds of relationships that we can find ourselves in. And that, I'm discovering more and more about it in terms of like, soul partner, twin flames, la la la, whatever direction you want to go in. But when it comes to children and babies and spirit babies, I think that because they choose, right? They're choosing like this, I want to come through this vessel. And I believe that there is disappointment and there's disillusionment that can happen for us when we realize when our hopes and dreams of what something could be. I think that's almost the most painful thing, right? I've been there where I've like literally mapped out. I was engaged to a guy. We owned a yoga studio together in Scotland, and it really broke my heart actually at the end of that relationship because it was not the loss itself actually, because it was the right thing to do at that time. It was more the projection of
Yeah,
what
the
could have been.
grieving of the life you could have lived, sort of thing.
Yes. And so I like that. I like that phrase, high intention, low attachment to things, because I mean, it's easy to say, it's hard to practice, but that, offering up, I think that's where devotion comes in. When you've been weathered a few times with some heartbreaks and you're just like, you know what? I offer myself up on the altar of love for the highest possible outcome. And if this is in divine, if this is in alignment, it will work. And
Mm,
if my soul is needing to go elsewhere to experience something else with actually a soul partner or someone who is more aligned, then also trusting that. We don't know what's in the future. We don't know, one thing's certain, we were born and we die. We have no idea who's going to betray us, who's going to leave, what's going to happen,
mm,
even in the most beautiful situation, right? And I think if we crack ourselves open to that and we let ourselves go into like the feeling of like, shit, this is all so impermanent,
mm,
even in a marriage, even in the most devoted union,
mm.
then we can like it's a law, but we can let ourselves like live it more fully as well, you know?
Yeah, I definitely resonate with that because I actually call him my most successful relationship.
Mhm.
It's the worst relationship that I've had by far, but it is my most successful. Is the most so someone has asked me this before. They're like, "Oh my god, you've been through fucking hell and back. I am so sorry that you did that." And I've kind of been really careful now like to tell my story because not that I'm ashamed of it, but because too many people hear it and assume victimhood or assume tragedy or assume that sympathy's required. But without him, yeah, obviously I wouldn't have my daughter. That's like a given. But I'm really just talking about the self and the
Mhm.
relationship because he continues to be her father. That's a successful relationship for her. That's got nothing to do with me. But the relationship between he and I is the most successful that I've had because I've never been able to get so deep into the ruins of me and
Mm.
in a way that he really required a level of truth from me in the way that I required it of him. And he's gone through his own catharsis and catalytic change as well.
Mhm.
But in the sense for me, it was like, other partners that I had had allowed me to build a relationship with them on the ruins of whatever had come before.
Mhm.
And this relationship didn't allow for that. It
Mhm.
had to go into the depth of me to, I guess, to find any aspect of me that wasn't willing to. It's like that parasite cleanse in a human form in a different way.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's this questioning of and question. And so I think that what the conclusion that I've come to is like the form of a successful relationship has been very narrow, i.e., we live together, we eat dinner together, we sleep in the same bed together, we live our lives together. Navigating co-relationship via our daughter and via ourselves directly, it's obviously something that we are moving through. But I think what I'm talking to is sometimes these people come along and they say, oh, you're on your path to truth and that's what you really want more than anything. You want a devotion to yourself. You want intimacy with yourself. You want a true, wholesome, fully embodied life. Yeah, I'm going to get you there. You won't like it, but I'm going to get you there. It's going to hurt. It's going to break you apart. But you had purification to do. You had
Yeah.
detoxification, you had cleanse, you had shedding to do.
That's such a beautiful way of talking about it, and that's exactly what I feel like is like there's anything that is not love has to burn away in order for us to be open to the kind of love that we all really want, that devotion, we all really want that depth, that truth, that that commitment, that fit, we all want that. It sounds great, but it's like the reality of that is are you willing to burn down all of the wounds, all of the defenses, all of the bullshit that we all are holding in the way of that. And sometimes, sadly, it means the relationship itself is burnt to the ground.
And
In a que
sometimes it's surprising which ones last.
Yes, true. And they are like a phoenix, they get
Yeah.
stronger and stronger. And this is something that's I'm super passionate about is how conflicts actually can be portals to deeper intimacy, deeper
Mm.
growth. If you have the tools to be able to weather those storms together, I wholeheartedly believe that, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting because if you're available to let go of the story that you've been telling yourself, and sometimes I notice with people, with myself, the stories we tell ourselves in the present are creating the past. And what I mean by that is sometimes it's not a lie. Sometimes it's that we are truly trying to make sense of how we arrived where we arrived. And so the story that we're telling ourselves is our understanding of how we arrived at who we are now.
Mhm.
And it's harder in many ways to unravel that than an outright lie. Because when you're lying to yourself, you know you're lying to yourself. When you're trying to make sense of something about, well, I've arrived here and this is the person that I am now, so this must be the story that got me there. That can
Mhm.
be really challenging to put a fine tooth comb to. And
Mhm.
so in your conflict, you telling that story that you're telling to yourself and to other people, to that person, has to be dismantled because that person will never agree with it.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's not for the faint of heart if you'd like to, like, take your therapy session to the person that you're in conflict with, but you will not get any consensus, and you need to know that going in, but it
Yeah.
can often be the way to just smash open the illusions that you're feeding yourself.
Yeah, and I think it's like an ultimate form of ego death. Some people go and drink ayahuasca
Yeah.
and whatever, do a million plant medicine ceremonies. It's like if you can stay in the heat of conflict in union and transmute that fire together like that, you need to obliterate the ego.
Yeah.
It cannot survive in that sense. And I actually don't believe that ego is bad and all of that because we need a little bit of it to survive in this modern day world. But,
Well, I've
you
started
know what I'm
calling
saying?
ego the falseness because it's not necessarily the ego itself that I wanna dismantle because I am going to
Yeah,
have a personality. I'm going to have
yeah,
this
of course.
person self. but the falseness I can. And the only reason I'm smirking is because that's why it's called becoming flame. It's literally the moment that you choose to stand in the heat,
Wow. I love that.
to burn hot enough that you can actually burn through that which is no longer relevant, that is no longer the truth that you're clinging to as this false truth of this false identity, and actually stand the heat of your own flame to alchemize into the phoenix that you be, basically.
Absolutely. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not without like 20 years of hard work to come up with that name, but yeah.
I'm going through the fire self, right? But I think that this is a really interesting angle to consider for any woman who's listening to this who is of the strong disposition and yeah, in love is somehow not being met.
Mm,
This, what we're talking about right now, the heat, the fire, the conflict, the intensity of someone holding a mirror up and you being able to bear the reflection of yourself, of someone actually challenging you, of
mm,
leading you, of
mm,
calling you out, not you the one that's like, oh, the dishes aren't done, but actually someone saying, hey, what's up? And you needing to reveal yourself over and over again in vulnerability, you know, this is the reason why women are not wanting to go there because it's scary. It's hard. It's a full-time job, I'm gonna be honest, and it's an amazing, most beautiful thing in the world, but it is something that you have to be ready for, and it's not just being cute and soft and
mm,
learning how to talk to him and manipulate him. It's actually us cracking ourselves open to be able to bear the risk and be courageous enough to lean in
mm,
to kind of, relationship that actually will reveal parts of you that you don't like, that you don't want to see, that you avoid. So I think that rather than asking the question, why are there no good men? Maybe asking yourself the question, why am I more comfortable being the one in control? Why am I more comfortable being the leader? Is more empowering to me. I think you might get further with that question.
yeah, I agree because those were the kinds of questions that the honestly, the hardest question that I've ever had to answer in my life is, why can't I let go of the control here? What is it happens? What happens if I'm in, especially like in something as high stakes as parenting?
Mm,
What happens if we're co-parents and it's not me as the lead parent with him as a Disney dad
yeah.
and, me complaining, "He's a Disney dad, I do everything." Well, what have you let him do?
Hmm.
What have you actually let him do? And, there's a lot of reasons and excuses and all of this that I can come up with, but you have to sit with the truth of that, and you have to really accept, not just to yourself and to your ego in this moment, and in my case, it's a parenting decision. So it's like, can
Yeah.
I face 20 years from now and I'm put in front of a child? Can I give a
Mm,
good enough answer? And I think that's a really good way of dismantling an ego control point. It's like, and if that's just a relationship question, are you willing to assemble a panel of all your exes and see each one of them that you were so called too controlling or to this or to that with all of them, and they all say that? Are you really willing to say, I am the common denominator here? This is the theme.
yeah, I got goosebumps
Not
with that.
easy,
It's not
not
easy.
fun.
It's easier just to say, you
He's
know
the
what?
problem.
Yes, fuck him. Or whatever, the rhetoric. And
Metatoxic.
yes, or, you don't need him anyway, or no, and you go into it's the pull, right? When you leave a relationship and there's so much pain and you're trying to figure it out and there's a loss and there's guilt maybe because you contributed to the ending of that. Let's be honest, there's maybe self-punishment going on. The most easy way is to just create some kind of like power of like, I'm independent, I don't need you anyway. This is how it was. But the problem is when we approach breakups like that, rather than it being a breakthrough for ourselves, I think we cheat ourselves of the opportunity to actually go, okay, this ends here with me now. I might not be able to control him, but I can control my side of the street and be really fucking honest that this is a pattern for me and I want to heal it. I want to spiral up from
Mm,
the cycle. And I think it's also okay that we have our like tender spots. I don't think that they ever go away.
yeah,
I think that we learn how to hold them and actually integrate them and not let them run the show from the unconscious, you
yeah.
know?
Oh, there's a lot in this conversation that I've taken away. I think I've learned more what you mean about devotion. I think I also really felt and heard your point of like, but it's not enough to just give yourself love and intimacy and devotion. Like, we're not made for that. And we're participating in a whole nefarious agenda by complying with that belief system. And I think whenever we find a belief system that's been fed to us from the external world and it's giving us a life that's not necessarily that which is part of our true heart's desire,
Mhm.
it's our obligation as women to really delve into that belief and like, is that mine? Where if it's mine, then where is it held in a point of truth within me? And if it's not, if that's something that's introduced or implanted, do I want to keep believing in that? Is
Yeah.
there a power to another belief now that I can pull my belief from independence, hyper independence, whatever it may be, and put that into union and try that on? And guess what? At the end of the day, if you don't like that belief in union, you can pull your energy out of that again. But like, the idea of just trying it on and saying, is it really true that I need to do this all alone? And is it benefiting me? Because I think most women already know the answer. It's no.
Mhm.
And you don't have to do it like you like it. Your
Mhm.
definition of devotion and union and cohabitation is yours and mine is mine. And each individual's. And I think what I'm really getting from was the really gentle, lovely pushback at, well, no, that's yet again just going into fueling this hyper independence loop that so many of us are in. And learning to build safety in your sense of union with someone, I think, is what I'm hearing from you from this conversation, a very primary point before you get to feel safe in a union where somebody is providing, not just obviously money and finances, which is great, but all the other things. Because if you are a woman who already knows how to provide for yourself, well, what else is there for you? And that's the discovery point for you. And that union piece is really going to open that conversation up.
Mhm.
It doesn't really matter what it is. It's like whatever it is for you. Whatever it's like, what is your biggest dream and your greatest desire for your life and for union and for your investigation and discovery of true unconditional love? Partner is going to get you there, is going to test you. And, you know, I can learn to expand my definition of a successful relationship in that way, I think, as well. Will be really, really interesting.
Yeah.
I've learned a
I
lot.
would I would love to just like, yeah, leave with an essence of for the listeners of most of the women that I speak to, that I work with, they actually hold themselves back from
Mm,
claiming what they really desire because they're like they don't let themselves even go there because they're afraid it won't happen. And then there are women also who are living in a kind of daydream bit maiden thing and seeing potential in men that is not there. This is not what I'm describing. I'm describing someone, I'm describing the ability to actually open up the possibility that you're worthy of receiving the kind of love that you see reflections of. Maybe you see a couple and you're like, wow, that's real. Maybe you see it on social media. I know it's just a fraction of reality, but these things, they're coming towards you and you feel like, oh, it exists, it exists. Let that in, let it
mm,
in. And actually, when you let it in, it starts to become a reality that you can operate from. But if you don't let it in, if you choose not to, if you wait for a confirmation externally, then you're going to be waiting a long time. So you can do it. And if you feel struggling, you can join my free soft power challenge too.
Yes. So, Rose, tell us how we can connect with you.
Yeah, so the best way is to actually just follow me on Instagram. It's Rose in Devotion, and I have a free 10-day soft power challenge for women who are either in union and you want to go deeper, you want deeper intimacy, devotion, or for women who are dating for union and you're ready to claim it within a relationship with yourself and see it echoed out. That's the approach. So you can find me there.
Thank you so much for sharing the codes, the wisdom that you hold, the journey that you've traveled. I am a true believer that women are networking beings and that we actually download from each other that which we are missing in ourselves or wanting to, activate within ourselves. And I feel very full, I feel very, you know what I feel? I feel very erect in my spine.
Mm.
And that was one thing that you said in the beginning. So I'm going to take notice of like whether my heart starts feeling a bit softer and my spine starts feeling a bit straighter because I think these things have a way, these conversations have a way of just like seeping into our lives. And then all of a sudden you're like, wait, hold on, that thing that she said that one time, yeah, I'm feeling that now. So please follow Rose on Instagram. She has a beautiful love life that you can completely devour and, Netflix and chill over. And otherwise, follow her in her soft power course. I think it's a good entry point into working with you and really feeling more of you if you've liked this conversation. And you know what? I was thinking maybe I'll even call you back for a part two so you can divulge the difference in your feminine business styles post this relationship because I think like I was dying to ask you questions about that, but it was like, why we're not really opening into that side of the conversation. We're like really
Yeah, yeah.
held very tightly in this, but I think lots of people would find that very fascinating.
I would love to do that actually. Yeah, because a big part of that is the masculine. So in a union, that was key. So yes, TBC, that one.
TBC part two is coming. Find everything below to connect with Rose in the show notes below, and we will catch you next week. Bye bye.
Thank you, Kate. Bye.